All right, how you doing? Mr. DJ back counting down fantasy playlists of April 23rd, 1990. Well, we're in the top 10 now, and you're probably familiar with this record. It reminds me of something. It's strange how little things stick in your head, and you remember them 20, 30, 40 years later. I remember driving one afternoon listening to Dick Barkley doing his Odie show. He was a DJ, Odie's DJ. He's probably still doing his syndicated show. He said something to the effect that one hit wonders, these one hit artists, make the most out of their one hit. And it was something like that. And such is the case with the song at number 8 on this fantasy playlist, Jane Child, Don't Want to Fall in Love. And this was huge back in the spring of 1990. This was all over the radio. And the thing, and you had the ringing keyboards, the phosphorant drum patterns that just smuggled their way into your head. And you just couldn't get it out. It wasn't going to get out of your head anytime soon, that was for sure. And she released about 4 albums, about 8 singles, roughly around 8 singles. Her last single, 2004, she covered Tina Turner's We Don't Need Another Hero. Very talented. Although she only had that one big hit, she's definitely very, very talented on this album, which was called Jane Child, self-titled album. Released in 1989, Don't Want to Fall in Love was the second single. She played all the instruments, except for the guitar. And the video shot in New York City, she alternated between the nightlife and then she's laying down those tracks on the Fairlight synthesizer. Keep coming back to the Fairlight. It was a digital, I wish I could get my head around these complicated instruments. But the Fairlight, a digital synthesizer, a sampler, very popular back in the 80s, was introduced in 1979. It's called the Fairlight CMI, something like that. And she's laying down tracks on the Fairlight. You see her just jumping around on the synthesizer. It's really cool to learn about these instruments that they played that helped shape the sound of the 80s going into the 90s. But it wasn't really dance music or rock and roll that started her out. It was classical music. Her dad was a classical musician, and she was classically trained on the piano. But when she was 15 years old, she left school and joined a band, a touring band, going out on tour, playing the synthesizer. She was singing songs and got all kinds of jobs, singing on commercial jingles. She played in piano bars, played an organ in church at one time. She started sending out demos to various record companies. One record company took an interest in her, and the record company moved her to New York City. Then they moved her to Los Angeles. But Jane Child was, well, her real name was Jane Richmond. Jane Richmond, though, was a little frustrated because she was very, very strong about this. I want to produce my own material. Don't hook me up with another producer. This is all me. I'm going to do this whole thing. And she left the record company and she started shopping around and she got a deal with Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers, they signed her on her terms. And the debut album, it's all her. 100% except for the guitar parts. The song went to number 2 in the States, held out the number 1 spot by Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor. And by the way, that song is coming up later on in the countdown. It only went to number 22 in England. You'd think a song like this would be number 1 in England for weeks. It's a perfect British dance record, basically. But the deal is, Jane Richmond, well known as Jane Child, she would not perform on Top of the Pops, a very popular, this is the British version of American Bandstand. You remember American Bandstand, although it started going out by about 1989, 1990, but Top of the Pops, that's a British musical institution. It has been on for ages, for years, decades. She would not appear on Top of the Pops when the song was climbing the charts in England because she thought it was a sellout. But if she went on Top of the Pops, the song probably would have gone top 10. Jane Child at number 8. Don't Want to Fall in Love on my fancy playlist, April 23rd, 1990.